Okay guys, try to recollect what we have discussed in the last class. So in the last class, we have been understanding the classes in TypeScript. A class is a model or a blueprint of objects. So what properties, what methods must be stored inside the object? That list of properties and methods are present inside the class. For example, you wanted to store the employee details of an organization. Totally, we have 10,000 employees. But for all these 10,000 employees, whichever the list of fields and operations you want to perform for each and every employee, that list must be present inside the class. Such a class is called as such a model is called as a class. So the class we have to define like this: class space class name. And we have to prepare the property and values, property name and data type. Here we have to provide the name of the property, and here we have to provide the data type, and here we have to provide the name of the method, some code here, parameters, parameter 1, parameter 2, n number of parameters, and every parameter may contain the data type. So for example, if you want to add the numbers, you will receive two parameters a and b. So you will give the name of the parameter a and the corresponding data type number. Same way other parameters and other data types. And optionally we can specify the return type here, colon return type. In case if you want to return the value, so returning the value is optional. So a class may contain any number of properties with values. Property will store a value. Method will do some process. Okay, based on this syntax, we can create any number of classes, and any number of a class can have any number of properties and methods. And after that, we have to create object by giving new followed by the class name. Actually, this is what we have already discussed in the last session, and already we have seen some example in the yesterday lesson. Okay, we are learning all these programs in which language now? TypeScript language. Today and tomorrow we are going to focus on particularly TypeScript language, and from the next class onwards, day after tomorrow onwards, we are going to start actual Angular. Okay, so actual Angular programming is not yet started. Today and tomorrow will be TypeScript sessions. Okay, let's try to go with the programs. The editor that we are going to use is Visual Studio Code, and the browser can be anything, Mozilla Firefox or Chrome or whatever it is. So in this Visual Studio Code, we have to open the new file, and in this new file, we have to write your code. Try to observe what the process I'm going to follow for creating the program. Here, I'm going to prepare a student class. It is recommended to start the class name with a capital letter. So class student, and inside this we have something called student ID number, student name, and marks. These are the properties we have. That means for every student you would like to store these three values, that is student ID, name, and marks. Three values you wanted to store for every student. Now I'm going to save this first. Go to file menu, save, and in this one, okay, I'm going to select the location like C:\TypeScript, and also given the file name student.ts. File name is student.ts. So file extension must be .ts. Right, once we have saved this, the next activity that we have to do, we have to create one or more methods. So method is like, for example, I would like to get the result. get the result. I mean to say I want to return the pass or fail. So what could be the return type? String type, because I would like to give string, pass or fail. Okay. Now we have to check the marks. In order to access the marks value, we have to give this dot marks. This dot marks is greater than or equal to 35. We are going to return the value called pass. Otherwise, return the value fail. So we have a class, okay, with some properties and also some method, and we are going to create an object. If you want to create an object, new student. So this statement or syntax will create an object for the student class. Once an object is created, what exactly happens is some memory will be allocated for the student. Some object memory will be allocated. This is object. This object will be stored inside the RAM. Okay, once you create a new student, first because of new, just an empty object will be created. Always new means empty object, but there should be some properties and methods to store the data and to process the data. So those properties and methods have been taken from which class? Student class. That's why always we have to mention a class name after the new. So we have to mention the student ID, student name, and marks, get result method. This list of properties and methods have been taken from the student class, because after the new we have mentioned the student. And the default values of all these variables irrespective of the data type is undefined. For a string, for number, for boolean, for any data type, the default value is undefined. If we don't want the undefined, we have to manually assign the value into the corresponding property. And this is the method. This method is able to do some process. See, it is able to read the value, it is able to return the value, either pass or fail. So it is able to do some operation. So for other examples, suppose you would like to calculate GPA, you would like to calculate the grades list, you would like to calculate the internal marks, you would like to calculate some different aspects of the student. For every different aspect of the student, you can create the appropriate method. Every method consists of certain set of statements to do some particular operation. Okay, an object is formed. You can remember this picture. An object is formed with the given properties with values. The default values of the object is undefined. So if you want to refer this particular object many times, what will you do is that you will store this object reference in a variable where some variable name, for example, yes, this is of which type? Student data type. See, just like a number is a data type, string is a data type, student is also act as a data type, because this variable is containing a reference of the object. So what is the difference between object and reference variable? I would like to explain. See this. Suppose we have something called an object. What the object contains? Object contains the list of properties and methods. Properties and methods are stored inside the object that will be physically exist in the RAM temporarily while the program is running. And also one more thing, reference variable also will be stored inside the inside the memory. But this reference variable will not store the data, will store only the reference to the object. We can also say address of the object. Address of the object. So based on this reference or address, we are able to refer to the particular object. So always the reference variable will not store the actual object, will not store the actual data or actual methods. Will store only the reference or address of the object based on which you are able to locate the particular object easily. So that's what the relation between the reference variable and object. Many people misunderstand the reference variable as itself is an object. No, reference variable is reference variable only. Reference variable is just a variable which is ready to store a reference of the object. So New object makes an object, right? New student. This code will create an object, right? The object reference is being assigned into the variable yes. So yes is equal to reference of the particular object, not all the objects, only the specific object. In case if you make another object, you can go for the separate reference variable. I want to say for every object we can create a separate reference variable. Okay, fine. Now I would like to get the values of the individual properties. See, once you type like s dot, automatically it is showing the list of properties, list of methods, whatever present in this particular corresponding object. So s refers to an object, right? In that object, what are the properties methods exist? All of them are accessible here. So we are not accessing the class members here, but we are accessing object members. Remember that point. So now student name, marks, and get result. Here get result is a method, that's why we have to give the round brackets for this. So save this program. I would like to execute this. In order to execute, there are two ways. In the previous lessons, we have executed this program through Node, but now I would like to show how to execute the program through HTML program, means on the client side. When you execute your TypeScript program through Node, it is equal to server-side program. When you execute your program through HTML, that is equal to client-side program. So TypeScript doesn't be a client-side program or server-side program by default. It's just a program. TypeScript program is just a program. It's not client-side, it's not server-side on its own by nature. It depends on how do you execute this. If you execute this program through Node.js, it is equal to a client-side server-side program. And if you execute through the HTML in the browser, that is nothing but the client-side program, because browser itself is a client-side. So my suggestion to go with the client-side development, because in our codes we are not targeting server-side. Angular is basically client-side development framework. That's why I suggest you to go with the client-side programming for the TypeScript. Okay, because what exactly we are going to use, how we are going to use TypeScript in our codes perspective is client-side only. So anyway, in our folder C: TypeScript, we have a student.ts, but can we execute this student.ts file directly in the browser? No. We have to compile this, means convert this TS file into JavaScript file. How to compile? So go to the command prompt, and there we have to give the command cd, that particular folder where your program is present, that particular folder. All of you able to understand? Now this folder is nothing but equal to this folder. So once you located that particular folder, we have to give the command tsc filename.ts. This command will compile the student.ts. If you have any kind of doubt how to compile and execute, just check it out here. Okay, already I have shown you earlier, but if you have any kind of doubt still, you can just verify here. So the thing is, we have saved the file at certain location, and we have went to the particular location in this command prompt window by using cd command. Then the actual command to compile is the tsc space filename.ts. So it will automatically compile. That means after successful compilation, you would like to get immediately student.js file. This student.js file will be ready to run, but can we double click on this file somewhere? Can we execute this? No, we cannot double click or run this directly. The .js file will not run directly in the browser. So we have to invoke it through an HTML file. So from the browser perspective, we have to call HTML file. HTML file will call the JS file. In that way, indirectly, JS file runs in the browser, not directly. So that is the reason it is must to create a HTML file in order to execute the JS file in the browser. But in case if you want to execute the particular JS file through Node.js, no need of creating an HTML file. So directly we can go for the node space filename.js. But I am not going to show that today because I already have shown you yesterday. Now the file name is, the file name can be anything. For example, I am giving student.html. So this file name of HTML file and the file name of TS file can be same or can be different also, no problem. the file name of HTML file, TS file, or maybe JS file. All these three file names may be same or different also, not a problem. Okay, now, so here you are going to write the typical HTML syntax. So we have just created a simple program with a heading, and if we want to execute this HTML file, we have to double click on the corresponding file so that we can see the output. Right, now we can see the student.html is visible on the screen, but I would like to open the console window. To open the console window, right click, inspect element. Right click on the browser, inspect element. Observe carefully to open the console, inspect element. Again, you will ask me like how to open the console. I am going to show very clearly. You have to see, observe carefully. Right click on the browser, inspect element. Right click on the browser, inspect element will open the console. Now once you open the console, there is nothing actually by default. Of course, ignore this message like the character encoding of something. Just ignore this. It's a default message if you don't specify the meta tag of the content type. Okay, ignore that. The actual requirement is we have already compiled the TS file into JS file, right? The compiled file, that is JS file, must be loaded into the HTML file. So what we have to do, so script src is equal to the student.js file. We cannot specify the .ts file, but we must mention only the JS file. Now once we save this and run this, now we can see everything is like undefined and it is saying fail. Yes, perfect. The program executed very perfectly because the default values of all these variables or properties is by default undefined. I told you already in the previous explanation. So because we have not yet assigned any value, so there are several ways to assign the value. One way is that you can directly assign along with the declaration, like this. This is one of the options. So once we give this and try to compile this again, as you modify the TS file, you must compile. So after compilation, we are getting the corresponding file, that is student.js file. This file has been regenerated. I mean, old code has been overwritten with the new code. So with this modified code, the TS file has been compiled so that we got the corresponding latest JS file. That latest file directly will run. No need of changing anything in the HTML file because file name is same. Only code is different inside it. It will execute directly. No need of making changes to HTML. Now we can see the updated output, that is 1@1 Scott 90 and pass. Okay, got it. Next, so this is one of the ways to initialize, but it is not much recommended way to initialize because we have to write the same logic inside a constructor. The constructor is exclusively meant for the initialization of the properties or performing any kind of initialization logic. Now let's understand the constructor. So what is constructor? So constructor is a special type of method in the class. It is mainly meant for initialization of properties of class. So if you want to initialize the properties of the class, suppose the student class has these properties, you would like to initialize them. The best place to initialize them is a constructor. So constructor is mainly meant for initialization of the values of the particular class. Okay, fine. But it can also contain any initialization logic. The difference between initialization of the properties and initialization logic is that initialization of the properties means just assigning a value. For example, x equal to 10, that's it. But initialization logic means some code, some process. For example, you want to do some calculation, you want to perform addition, subtraction, multiplication, or you want to check some conditions, you want to go through some loops. You'd like to do something. Okay, some process you would like to perform, such as calculations or condition checking. Then finally, we are going to initialize the values into the corresponding properties. So all the process what we have done is called as initialization logic. Just assigning a value into the property is called as initialization of the properties. So for both, constructor is best suitable, but this will execute automatically when an object is created for the class. The syntax of the constructor is a constructor. That's it. Constructor cannot return the value, but it can receive the value. It can receive any number of parameters, but it cannot return the value. Constructor cannot return the value. Okay. So the name of the constructor is the constructor itself. If you go with the other languages, maybe Java language or something, the constructor, the name should be same as class name, right? Do you remember? So, but in TypeScript, the constructor name itself is constructor. So it is recommended to initialize the properties and write any kind of initialization logic in the constructor. So here we have something called this dot student ID is equal to some value, whatever the value that you would like to assign, you can assign that. Again, we try to compile and run this. Now we can see the output. Same output we have got. Okay, fine. But the issue is that with this code, assume we have second object. Second object is expected to show the different data because it's a two different students. See, you are one student and your friend also another student. Okay, so for you, student ID will be different. For your friend, student ID will be different. Both of you will have your own student ID, your own student name, your own marks, and your own result also. Okay, so even though both of you are students, but the values are isolated, but our program is showing the same data for both the objects. Now you can notice two objects we have created. The same data is being shown for the first and second object. This is the data about the first object, this is the data about the second object. Same data is being stored. It's not good, right? So if our program is perfect, it allows us to initialize different values instead of giving some hard-coded values here. So it's not good practice of programming to hard-code the values here, but alternatively we have to pass the values from this place dynamically. So we'd like to pass the values from here. But in this place of hard-coded values, just you can assume these values are coming from text boxes. How to really get the values from the text boxes, I will explain later. Just feel that these are the values that we got from the text boxes. Just assume that. Okay, those values I'm going to assign into these particular properties respectively. These three values into respective properties. But how it is possible? First, we are going to pass three values, right? To receive these values, there should be some parameters in the constructor. So we can give any parameter name. So for example, you can give ABC or something. But instead of giving ABC or some XYZ or some unknown names, it is recommended to give some meaningful names. Okay, so it's a good practice of programming always to give meaningful names. So student ID is which data type? Number data type. Student name, marks. Notice these names what I have given here is exactly same as the properties what we have given, but they are different. These are the properties, these are the parameters. So what makes the difference between properties and parameters? So properties always be a part of the object and accessible as long as the object exists in the memory. Means till end of the program, these particular properties are accessible. It's like a permanent. Until you close the browser, these properties are stored inside the object, accessible along the side of object. But these particular variables are called parameters, which are only and only specific to the constructor. So the constructor execution may take maybe suppose half second. Just assume that in that half second of duration only this particular student ID, student name, marks available. So once the constructor execution has been finished, these parameters are just unknown. So what I'm going to say, these properties are long lived and these are short lived. So anyway, we have to copy these values of the parameters into the respective properties, because my main intention is I want to initialize the values of the properties, right? So instead of giving hard coded values, just give like student ID. Here, this dot student ID is referring to the property, just student ID is referring to the corresponding parameter variable, and so on. The same process repeats. And in the second object, you can pass different values, right? Now we can just compile. For each modification, the same process repeats tsc, the file name.ts, but no need of making any changes to HTML file because we are getting the up-to-date latest compiled JavaScript file we are getting. Now we can refresh. Now it's perfect. It is displaying the latest values. Okay, so this is how to handle the constructor, objects, and classes perfectly. The next topic, inheritance. The next topic is what? Inheritance. Okay, let's try to understand what is inheritance and how it works. So inheritance is a concept of creating parent-child relationship among two or more classes. Assume we have at least two classes. One class will act as a parent class, other class will act as a child class. For example, we have some class called as a student class, and we have another class called engineering student class. So student is a parent class, engineering student is a child class. So if any special properties are required for the engineering student class, those we have to add in the engineering student class. So the student class is representing a student, just a general purpose student, a normal student. For example, the student class has a student ID, as we mentioned already, student name and marks. And also there is a method also, there is a get marks student, get result student. But for the engineering student class, there may be some special additional properties or additional methods. For example, internal marks is an extra property that we have only for exclusively for engineering student. Okay, assume that. And also we have something called get grade, get GPA. So this type of properties and methods we are going to have only for the engineering student class. So those exclusive properties and methods will be added to the particular engineering student class. So alongside of these particular properties and methods, the engineering student class wants to share all the properties of the student class. So whenever you want to create a class based on an existing class, you would like to go for the inheritance. You are going to create a class, but not from the scratch level. You want to extend an existing class. The word extend is very, very perfect here. It is just like, suppose already there is a pre-constructed building, already it is good and it's already having just 2 floors. But you're going to extend it by adding some 3 or 4 floors. Okay, overall it becomes 4 floors. Already up to 2 floors already constructed from the scratch. And third floor and fourth floor you just build up on the top of that. Okay, that is an example of inheritance. But if you just completely collapse the building and restart the building construction from the zero level, I mean from the foundation level, that is nothing but creation of the separate class. I mean, it's not inheritance, it's just creation of a class. There is no separate name for it. It's normal class development. So particularly when you extend an existing class, means you are going to create a new class based on the reference of the existing class. So that is called inheritance. So here this student class is also called as parent class or base class, or you can say super class. There are different names. This parent class or base class or super class will provide its members to the child class. This engineering student class will be called as a child or derived class or subclass. Whatever the word it may be, the concept remains same. And one parent class may have one or more child classes, but one child class can contain only one parent class. One parent class can have only one, can have one or more child classes, but one child class can have only one parent class. Okay, fine. Now let's prepare this application quickly. So already we have a student class. I would like to add something called class engineering student class. So this class is not going to be just normal class, but it's going to be a child class for the student class. So how it is possible? We can give extends. The engineering student class extends the student class. So in this way, the student class become as a parent and the engineering student class become as a child. So the syntax could be class, child class name, extends, parent class name is the syntax. So that means we can assume by default whatever exists in the parent class or by default exists in the child class we can assume. But we can add additional properties and methods. So for example, we can add some internal marks and also get grade. Okay, here actually we'll keep some conditions. For example, if the total marks we should have, right? So sum of marks, how do you get the sum of marks? This dot marks plus this dot internal marks. Did you notice we have not declared marks property in the same class? Check it once. We have not declared marks. Of course, we have created internal marks, but not just marks, right? So this is shared from the parent. Got it. So not only just marks. If you type like this dot, it is showing all the properties. Correct. So now this dot marks and this dot internal marks both are sum into the sum variable, and now we are checking. Average also I would like to have. So average value is equal to sum by 2. So now I'm checking that average value is greater than or equal to 35 or not. I'm checking. Not 35. Suppose 80 means O grade, return A grade. Actually, O grade, A grade, B grade, different grades will be there. That logic we can just keep here. I'm skipping all that logics. So if you want, you can write fully qualified code. If when A grade, when O grade, A grade, B grade, all the code you can just write. So anyway, for ease of understanding, I'm skipping all that code. So here you will write the logic for generation of the grade. So if any methods and properties, if you thought, you can write yourself. But which are specific to engineering student. If it is applicable to all types of students of all the courses in the college, then you can just go for the student class again. Okay, that's what the difference. Okay, fine. Now, instead of making an object for the student class, if you can make an object for engineering student class, it would be more benefit for you, because you have access to all the members of the student by default. Additionally, these two members also available. But If you want to generally represent a normal student, not a specifically engineering student, then again we have to create object for the student class. See, we cannot blindly say, okay, always create object for the student class. Never go for the always blindly create object for the engineering student class. Never go for student class. We cannot say like that. So it all depends on up to you. So if he is really a engineering student class, so if he is really engineering student physically, then you can create an object for engineering student class. Otherwise, if he is a normal student, he may be engineering or maybe belong to other branch or something. Just you should go for the general student class. So what I meant to say, we can create object for child class or parent class also. It's up to you when to use which one. So now here we have to pass properties. Parameter values. So here we are going to pass four values particularly because okay, student ID is available, student name, marks, okay, just like this. But we also have one more like internal marks. So that is the reason what we'll do. We'll have to pass one more value. These four values must be received by another constructor here. So even though the parent is sharing its properties and methods to the child, but it's not sharing its constructor, remember. Parent will not share its constructor. It will keep its constructor on its own. So if you would like to access the constructor, you should have separately in the child class. Parent will not share its constructor to child. Understand? So what we have to do exactly is that we have to receive these four values in this child class constructor, and we have to redistribute the same values to the corresponding parent class. See what I meant to say? Same, just like above. Here also student ID, student name marks you are receiving, but along with that, internal marks also we are trying to receive. And now, so totally four values are available. Out of these four values, which values you want to share to the parent? Student ID, student name, marks, right? So these values we have to carry forward to the parent. It's like from here we are going to pass four values. Those values came here respectively in the respective variables. I mean to say student ID assigns to 101, student name is equal to Scott, marks is equal to 80, internal marks are 45. So it's by default like this. And then these first three values we are going to carry forward to the parent now. So parent is asking, please give me student ID, student name, marks. If you are having extra values or not, I don't know. That's no way concerned with me. I want only three values. You must supply me. That's it. So we have to call super. The super keyword will represent the parent class. What is the parent class of the engineering student class? Nothing but student. So super is representing the parent class, and to the super class constructor, we are going to pass three values. That is the student ID, student name, and marks. So what about remaining value? Internal marks, right? So that internal marks we are going to assign into here. In that way, all the values have been initialized. Check it. Four values we have received. Three values we are going to share to the parent by using super constructor. This will call the parent class constructor, and remaining value itself we are going to assign into this particular variable. That's fine. And then finally, we are going to print all the values here. We can access all the parent members and the child members without any difference. There is no special syntax for calling the parent or child, because the parent members also finally become as a members of the child at the end of the story. I'm going to say in memory perspective. So there is no difference between parent class members and child class members. So even these properties and methods also become as a members of the object of child class. Okay, same way here also. Okay, now let's compile this and execute this. Now we can see what output. Just for clarity, I would like to give some separator line because it's confusing. Just the hyphens will be printed as a line there, nothing more than that. Because whatever we have given in the console.log double quotes, that will be as it is gets printed. Now we can notice clearly. So this is the first object and this is the second object. So it's working. Check it. Student ID, name, marks, internal marks, pass or fail, and grade. And same way this one. Total program will not be compiled. You must invoke the parent class constructor in the child class constructor. See, it is must. It is showing errors, right? It is must to call the parent. Okay.